The galaxy was never short of strange stories, but this one began in the strangest of ways, with a human researcher and a queen who wasn't really a queen. Dr. Ethan Cross had spent the better part of 3 years working on the remote world of Erana, a lush green planet ruled by the matriarchal species known as the Azari. They were towering women, standing easily over 7 feet, their skin glowing faintly with bioluminescence and their eyes shimmering like gemstones. The Azari were revered throughout the Orion Spur, not only for their beauty, but for their terrifying control over genetics. And their ruler, Queen Selera, was said to be the most radiant of them all. But Ethan didn't meet the queen first. He met her clone. #, #, the clone project. The Azari had been struggling with a genetic bottleneck for centuries. Their mastery over cloning had preserved their line, but something vital was missing: fertility. Clones could live, breathe, and rule, but they could not reproduce naturally. Ethan was invited as part of a desperate experiment. Humans, it seemed, carried a strange resilience in their DNA, something the Azari thought might repair the sterility in their cloned offspring. That was how Ethan found himself working alongside Lyra, a perfect genetic replica of Queen Selera. She had the queen's sharp jaw, the same flowing silver hair, and the same commanding gaze, except Lyra was softer somehow, curious, playful, not weighed down by the burden of ruling a star empire. She wasn't supposed to fall in love with him. He wasn't supposed to fall in love with her. But isolation has a way of pushing boundaries. Long nights of shared research turned into long conversations. Long conversations turned into quiet touches. And one night, against every regulation and every scientific protocol, Ethan crossed the line. Months later, the impossible happened. Lyra was pregnant. #, the queen arrives. When the news reached the royal court, shockwaves tore through the empire. The impossible had been made possible by a human. Ethan expected execution, or at least exile. Instead, he found himself standing in the grand hall of the Crystal Spire, with Queen Selera herself staring down at him from her throne. "You," she said, her voice like rolling thunder, "have achieved what our finest scientists have failed to accomplish for 5 centuries. You have given my clone what none of us thought she could have, a child." Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't know whether to bow or run. Lyra stood beside him, protective, her hand already on the slight swell of her stomach. Solara's gemstone eyes narrowed, flicking between them. Then, shockingly, her lips curved into something like a smile. "If this is true," the queen continued, rising to her full towering height, "then you are not just a guest of my empire human. You are now a resource." #, between clone and queen. Ethan didn't like the word resource. He liked it even less when Selera summoned him to her private chambers. "You have proven yourself valuable," she said, circling him like a predator. "But what was done with the clone must now be proven with the original." Ethan froze. "You mean you?" Solara's eyes gleamed. "Yes, I will not allow a copy of me to outshine the true queen of Erana. If my clone can bear a child with you, then I, too, must test this compatibility." Lyra protested fiercely when she found out. "He's mine!" she snapped, uncharacteristically fierce. "You may be the queen, but you cannot simply take him." Selera only laughed, a deep, regal sound. "Child, you are me. What you have tasted, I will taste also. It is only fitting." Caught between 2 identical women, the queen and her clone, Ethan realized just how far over his head he was. #, testing humanity. The queen was not like Lyra, where the clone had been gentle and curious. Selera was commanding and unyielding. She treated Ethan not as a partner, but as a subject in an experiment. Yet something strange happened during their time together. For all her authority, Selera began to soften. She had ruled for decades without companionship, always above, never equal. But Ethan wasn't afraid of her. He spoke to her like a person, not a goddess. One evening, after a long silence, Selera admitted, "We have been strong for so long, but in truth, we are dying. My people cannot continue as we are." I was ready to watch my empire fade into history. And then you arrived. For the first time, Ethan saw not a queen, but a woman, lonely, desperate, and burdened by the weight of an entire civilization. Hashtag, 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 the rivalry deepens. Weeks passed. Both Lyra and Celera were now bound to Ethan in different ways. The clone carried his child, proof of what was possible. The queen demanded her own chance at motherhood, unwilling to be overshadowed. The court was divided. Some saw Ethan as a savior. Others whispered that he was a corrupter, a dangerous anomaly who could destabilize her entire way of life. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself torn. He had genuine love for Lyra, but he couldn't deny the growing bond he felt with Celera. They were the same woman, and yet not. The queen was power incarnate. The clone was tenderness. Both wanted him. Both needed him. Hashtag, 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 a dangerous choice. The crisis came when Assassin struck. A faction of nobles, horrified by the idea of human contamination, attempted to kill Lyra before she could give birth. Ethan threw himself between her and the attackers, taking a blade to the shoulder. It wasn't a mortal wound, but it was enough to enrage both queen and clone. Celera unleashed the full fury of her royal guard, annihilating the conspirators. Lyra wept over Ethan, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. When he awoke days later, both women were at his bedside. Lyra clutched his hand, her face pale with worry. Celera stood behind her, regal but shaken. "You risked your life for her," the queen said softly. "I'd do it again," Ethan murmured. For a long time, Celera was silent. Then, with a rare vulnerability, she whispered, "Perhaps you would do the same for me." Hashtag, 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 hashtag the future of an empire. Months later, the galaxy trembled with the announcement. Asterisk, a clone of the queen, Lyra, had born a healthy child, half human, half Azari. Asterisk, the queen herself, Celera, was also pregnant, her own swelling stomach proof that Ethan's DNA could restore the empire's fertility. 2 children, 2 mothers, both genetically identical, yet wholly different. The Azari celebrated the dawn of a new age. Ethan was elevated to the title of Consort of the Crown, a position unheard of for a human. But in the quiet moments, when the pomp of court faded, Ethan often lay awake with both women at his side. Lyra, his gentle love, and Celera, his formidable queen. He had come to Verona as a scientist. Now, he was the father of an empire's future. And perhaps, he thought with a wry smile, the galaxy's strangest love triangle.